So it's Christmas time and I'm sat down with the family watching Apple TV's Spirited, a movie I wanted to watch on the premise alone. I love me some Christmas Carol and I'm a sucker for musicals. But as I'm watching it, there's just one thought inside my head that's distracting me. They really cast 3 lead actors in a musical who can't sing? Just kidding. This isn't Will Ferrell's best role. Will Ferrell is an incredibly interesting actor, as most comedians are. He's played a wide variety of characters in an incredible number of movies, from frantic whiny man-children to timid brown-nosed do-gooders to petty plastic princesses of decadence and capitalism. Ferrell has played every conceivable funny man in the book, and from almost every conceivable angle. He's been smart, stupid, nice, offensive, loud, and more loud. And yet, I've never really met anyone who likes Will Ferrell. Maybe they like some movies he's been in, or maybe they like 1 or 2 of his roles, but you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who likes him in every movie they've seen him in. Especially if one of those movies is Holmes and Watson. Or Get Hard. Oh Christ, look at this poster. And like, I get it. Sometimes his comedy really does amount to grown man does silly thing in a loud way. And for those of you seeking more from your comedy, I am incredibly sorry for what pop culture must have done to you. But I like him. I think he's a fine enough actor, and I've liked most of the movies I've seen him in. I think he brings an element to the table that not a lot of comedians can. But I could never really place that element until I saw him in Stranger Than Fiction. Stranger Than Fiction is a comedy drama written by Zach Helm and directed by Mark Foster, which follows the life of one Harold Crick, played by Will Ferrell, an unremarkable auditor for the IRS. Harold's life is boring, strictly scheduled and unfulfilling until one day he hears a narrator describing every one of his actions. This is disconcerting, of course. Harold believes he's having a psychotic break, but it's not quite as bad as what he hears the narrator say next.
Little did he know that this simple, seemingly innocuous act would result in his imminent death.
What? What?
The story follows Harold attempting to track down the author of his life, connecting with literary professor Dr. Jules Hilbert, played by Dustin Hoffman. And of course, this author is another character in the story, one Karen Eiffel, played by everyone's favorite magical nanny, Emma Thompson. Karen, like many of her name, is suffering from writer's block and hasn't actually written the final chapter where Harold dies. Pressure from her publishers and her no-nonsense assistant Penny Escher, played by Queen Latifah, has reached its breaking point, so Karen must finally decide the method of Harold's death. So the film is 2 parallel storylines. We have Harold and Hilbert using fiction to give purpose and meaning to the events unfolding around them, hoping to find some way to let Harold live, and we have Karen and Penny using reality to inspire and formulate Harold's tragic, inevitable demise. Naturally, these 2 sides are destined to collide. But that's where I'll leave the story for now. Unlike the marketing behind this film, I'm heavily anti-spoiler. It's how I was brought up. I won't say more about the plot in this video or about other characters in the story, but if you're intrigued, I highly recommend you seek it out yourself. It's £1 at your local CEX. Before I circle back to Ferrell though, I'd like to admit that metatextual narratives are nothing new. Since Rosencrantz and Guildenstern died, we've been obsessed with the idea of fiction discussing fiction and characters trying to change their written fates. Even the admittedly clever name, Stranger Than Fiction, isn't very original, considering there was another movie by that title only 6 years earlier. But I still find this movie incredibly special. You see, I sorta lied earlier. There's actually a 3rd storyline in this narrative. Us, the audience. I know, big shock. Hilbert at one point says,
"The last thing to determine conclusively is whether you're in a comedy or a tragedy."
Stranger Than Fiction presents this as a mystery for us to solve. The film has plenty of goofs and gaffes, but just as many sad or quiet moments. Moments where characters just inhabit the spaces they're in, or talk about the elements of life that they grapple with on a daily basis. We see the world that Harold lives in, we see the people he interacts with, and we have to decide whether this is a funny story about a man who's learning to love life on the advent of his death, or a sad story about a man who is about to die just when he found something to live for. We exist in both sides of the conflict. We know Karen needs to finish her book and Harold needs to die. In a narrative sense, we need him to die. His life was boring, slow, methodical, and closed off. Also, he's a tax man and probably doesn't like musicals. Chekhov's gun has to fire, and Harold's prophetic death needs to pay off.
And I can have a gun, and I must have a gun. That's the rule of Chekhov's gun. Have a gun.
But we get to see him change, to grow and appreciate the life he never got to live before, and the people that have come into his life since, and god damn it, we want him to live. We have absolutely no idea whether that can even happen. We don't know the rules. So while we're feeling all these moments of laughter and grief and romance and horror and serenity and confusion and life and death, Will Ferrell is just there nailing every single scene he's in. He's still got his loud moments, sure, but he's got just as many quiet ones. Moments where he's just sitting there, contemplating what he's going to do. Moments where he's desperately trying to break out of the cage he built for himself and actually connect with the people he's avoided for so long. Moments he wants to go back and do it all again because he got it so wrong the first time around and he only got to find this out at the end. I feel that. I think everyone can feel that. Stanislavski once said, "The main factor in any form of creativeness is the life of the human spirit, that of the actor and his part, their joint feelings and subconscious creation." And yet, in this multi-layered meta-narrative about the inevitability of death and consequences of life, Ferrell's raw, unfathomable emotions reach out and connect with us. And it is this human spirit that comes across in all of his performances. It's the exact kind of thing that allows you to wear a tight-fitting elf costume and get real New Yorkers excited for Christmas, or connect with your son over the love of a shared hobby, or do Despicable Me but 1,000 times funnier. It's this human spirit that turns what might be a very interesting and well-written cult classic into a strangely comedic and beautifully tragic cult classic. Stranger Than Fiction is not a well-known film. It was released in 2006 to lukewarm reviews and performed number 4 its first week at the box office, losing to Borat, The Santa Claus 3: The Escape Clause, and flushed away. But that doesn't stop it from being an incredibly special film to me, and what I believe is an incredibly special performance. So check it out. Thanks for stopping by.